It is a football show, and my name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod, and that is Easton Freeze joining us from the Hot Read Podcast. You're going to have to bear with me. I've been battling it started on Tuesday, got really worse Thursday night, and I've been battling the worst sinus infection of my life. It's worse than when
worst ever.
is by far the worst ever. Migraines. It took for today's the first day I'm actually feeling I put on clothes that aren't pajamas. So this is just in time for this podcast, of course. Easton at Easton Freeze Hot Read Podcast, a part of the
Rodcast
Network. And Braden is currently rumors are he's working on his extradition from a South American prison.
That's right. That's what I heard as well.
That is what the rumors are circulating on the internet about Braden's absence. We are brought to you by Seekers Beverages, award-winning Seekers Beverages. Has multiple awards, many awards, and they are the best sponsor to be with Kingston Group as well, who has been with us for a long, long time. But Seekers Beverages has helped us do the draft parties and stuff, and like that to me is if you did not come to the draft parties, because I know Easton, you and JT chose to have a conflicting stream, and you guys really missed out. I think you guys have
our
to.
Conflicting stream is longer running than the draft party, just for the record.
It's longer running. We've done the draft party 2 years. How long have y'all done the draft stream?
3.
Hot Read draft stream.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's been a draft stream that I've been a part of on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page for 3 years running. So that's all I know.
Yeah. But not you and JT. But you guys should be joining us because Seekers Beverages puts on a hell of a show.
Listen, we don't want to intrude. We'd be happy to collaborate, but you could set your thing up and we're never invited.
The first night's free. Just buy a ticket. I don't see why you guys can't buy a ticket. It's for the kids. Are you saying you
fans
hate
of the
kids?
show, not people that are part of the network? We don't want to steal seats from people that want to be there.
Hey, listen, the first night there's as many seats as possible. So
we got a year to figure this out. We'll figure something out for next year. We'll make it happen.
And then, of course, Kingston Group, buildkg.com. You guys know the drill with the Kingston Group. You know we've been talking about them since ever we've been on the show. They're a highly respectable design firm, architecture firm, home building, remodeling needs, buildkg.com. All right, Easton, at the top of the show.
Maybe next year JT and I set up the same stream, but in the room with you guys at the party, and then you guys just heckle us for 3 hours. Your drunk asses are just making it impossible for us to actually cover the draft.
We got analysis to do during the show. We don't have time to heckle you guys and provide
for 20 minutes on the Titans, but then for the rest of the first round.
Nobody needs the rest of the first round analysis. None of them are not Titans.
I completely disagree. I think you're wrong about that. I think you're wrong.
Either way, I want to start the top of the show with a disclaimer about this DeAndre Hopkins situation that's going on.
I've not. Fill me in on this. I saw this 10 seconds before we started. What happened?
Well,
I know he wasn't there
first
yesterday.
off, of course, Stillman has to go overboard. And,
Naturally.
Hopkins is not listed. He's not there. He's not on the field for OTAs. Right. And I think that should be the clarification that people have to say. Now, if you're a reporter, and you know that he's not at the building, that's fine. But absent from the open portion of on the field OTAs was DeAndre Hopkins. Of course, this gets tied into this idea that he has scrubbed his Instagram of all Titans stuff. That is patently false. First off, he has not scrubbed his Instagram because known Titans Instagram stalker and Broadway Sports Media employee Wes Wisley. This is what he put on Facebook. So multiple people. This is going to be a tough show for me to get through. I'm sorry for the audio.
I'm just enjoying you struggle, to be honest.
This is the most I have talked, and my nose is still all stopped up. So multiple people have asked me about what's up with Titans wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. Should have known that it was a Stillman tweet that's got people all worked up. Stillman's engagement farming for the day alluded to DeAndre Hopkins not having any Titans pictures on his Instagram and not being at OTAs, and therefore must be unhappy with his contract.
Gotta
Get the fuck out of here. He was more polite. He was GTFOH.
Right.
I go on Instagram regularly. I always tease him that he's a stalker.
He is.
And D-Hop has never had Titans pics on his Instagram account since joining the Titans. It's mostly his modeling pics and other non-football things. As for not being at OTAs, he was there last week. It's voluntary, so maybe he's just decided not to attend the second week of OTAs. This is a non-story. It's just clickbait for radio. I fully agree. And this idea that he's holding out or, angling for a new contract, like, I get it. Maybe that is a possibility. But I don't really get the sense that from everything that DeAndre Hopkins said last week and going into this week that it's just like, oh, he's not doing it. On the flip side, Easton, this morning it was discovered by 1045 at some point in the morning that he was at an On3 Elite Series conference.
Oh, we knew that yesterday. If you follow On3, you knew this hours ago.
Yeah, so this happened yesterday.
Right.
And it happened at so let me set the stage. This is a panel discussion for NIL 2025
right
NCAA rookies that are it's like, how do you spend your money? How do you work through the NIL? All this kind of stuff. And yesterday, DeAndre Hopkins spoke at this thing. Well, 1045 and A to Z is running with this like that is the reason why he wasn't there yesterday. He had a good reason to miss because he was doing this.
Sure.
Well, what they won't tell you, or maybe they didn't take the extra steps to fill it out, to do some actual journalism, is that Will Levis was also on that same panel at the same time.
Was the panel after practice?
It started at 3:30 p.m. Guys, maybe he just didn't go to practice, or maybe it was a vet rest day, or maybe this is part of the workout plan or anything that just happened to coincide with the On3 Elite Series thing. And listen, maybe he just decided, hey, I got this panel later. I'm not going to go to practice because, he's a guy that's big on his looks, is big on his modeling, and maybe he's like, I'm going to go have a good spa day, and I'm going to get fresh, prepared, get my fit ready, get a haircut. Maybe he's going to take the day to do that. Either way, it's not a big deal that he's not missing it. And I'm tired of people making this a big deal every year.
Right.
That veterans miss voluntary OTAs. Like, can we just put that to
rest? That's what I was going to say. First of all, this is a brutal combination of a story that does not matter and is being reported horribly. Hate that. That's a tough look. But beyond that, like you said, and we talked about this the other day in a private message about how I went down a rabbit hole, and I'm assuming you already knew this, but I went down a rabbit hole on the CBA negotiations by the NFLPA, the most recent one a couple years ago, and how the players wanted more money and the owners were like, no. And then the players were like, okay, well, how about we make more of the OTAs in the spring voluntary? And the owners were like, yes, absolutely. With the intention, obviously, the owners thinking the media will do our water carrying. And when they take advantage of the voluntary OTAs that they negotiated for, the media will spin it as they're being bad teammates or they're holding out, or they'll make it the onus will be on the players missing, not on the fact that the players negotiated to be able to miss in the first place. So I am never going to make it a big deal at all for any player missing OTA. Like, sometimes doesn't mean they want a new like, do I think Jamar Chase probably wants a new contract and that's why he's not at OTAs right now? Do I think so? Yes. But also it's within his rights to not be there. And I don't care if he's like, okay, show up at training camp. I'll see you in July.
Yeah, because you don't get fined for missing voluntary stuff. Like, that's the thing. Like, that is a sign or a signal.
If Jaquan Jackson's not there, I might take an issue with it, right? But like,
yeah.
Well,
like, nobody made a big deal about Jarvis Brown-Lee missing a whole week, but Javondre Sweat's missed. Man, he must be fat and injured.
He's fat and slow and he doesn't want it. He can't handle the
Jarvis
pressure.
Brown-Lee, nobody gave a shit that Jarvis Brown-Lee wasn't there, except for me apparently, for a couple of days. And at least he was back yesterday. And don't forget that PK reported that Javondre Sweat was very close to being there yesterday because he said it was likely that he would practice. So, you don't really know why a veteran's not going to be there. We know that L'Jarius Sneed's inside the building, right? That's something that Teron Davis, at least last week. Last week, he was inside the building. Okay. So we know he's there, but we also know that he missed a good portion of OTAs and minicamp and stuff last year. So, like, there's no reason to blow that out of proportion unless you're just desperate for content because you're an uncreative jackass. But either way, there you go. Shots fired right there, right? Either way, the reporting around DeAndre Hopkins, atrocious. Mm-hmm. And let's just get a grip, people. Okay, let's move on. Hold on.
As Zach is trying to breathe here, I'll vamp a little bit. He's listen, I know how you feel because JT and listeners to the Hot Read podcast can tell you that like 2 months ago, right in the heat of the draft cycle, I had an episode where I had a coughing fit where I couldn't breathe for 60 minutes, and it was brutal to listen to, and it was brutal to go through. So I sympathize with where you're at right now.
It's been pretty terrible, but at least this is going to be, I'm on the downslope. All right. So let's talk about some OTA topics that aren't, just DeAndre Hopkins and people missing.
Right.
The vibes are sky high.
Brother.
And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news or be the guy that like brings everybody down.
No, let's do that.
But I asked you what were your takeaways from OTAs yesterday, and you like put 4 bullet points for like almost exact 4 bullet points that I was feeling.
Look at us.
And I was like, because I've been saying for the last week and a half, like it's really hard not to buy into this hype, all this positivity and everything. But the vibes are just so crazy high.
Immaculate.
Are they too high?
They I don't know, man. Like that's it is suspiciously high a little bit. Like things are too perfect. And I was talking to Robbie Boren, who's the director of PR with the Titans yesterday during practice. He was asking me like, what's the scuttlebutt? What's the word on the street with the fans? And we were talking about how, man, things couldn't be more positive. You got Rand and Brian going on Bussin' with the Boys, doing all these different interviews where they're really open and things seem to be moving in a modern and positive direction. The offense is going to be pass heavy, and like you've got these exciting weapons and forward thinking, open-minded, just chillers, like dudes on this coaching staff that whether or not they're good or not, they're cool to talk to, they're cool to hang out with. And eventually the shoe's going to drop. They're going to face some adversity. They're going to lose 2 or 3 games in a row. Some key players going to get injured, a massive play calling mistake at the end of the game where people are criticizing Brian Callahan for his decision, and arguably it cost the Titans a chance to win. Like that's coming. It's not a matter of if, but when. And I don't know how they're going to handle. I'm not saying they're going to handle it poorly, but like I am sitting around waiting for something bad to happen, because it always does, no matter how good or bad your team is. And this, like, it's not unnatural for us to be in a honeymoon period with a relatively new GM, a new head coach, a new coaching staff, a very new team. Most teams are in that phase right now in May. But with the Titans, like you said, it is so exaggerated. It is so over the top. And I'm not saying there aren't good reasons to be really happy, but what's going to happen when there's reasons to be less happy? That's what I'm most curious about.
Yeah, it's weird because there's a lot to like about this team's approach, a lot to like about the culture they're instilling, the way that they are handling practices, teaching technique. We're going to get into all that kind of stuff, later on in the episode. But it really seems like I don't know if people are buying in too much, or if it's just like, I don't know what's being, it's weird, right? Because you hear all these guys talk about Treylon Burks. Everybody's talking about Treylon Burks.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of ties into our Treylon Burks hype train, which is just totally off the rails, it feels like at this point. But it's just like, everything's great. Everything's fantastic. Nothing's terrible. But it's all like, all this is great, but we'll see when the pad gets on. And like, that seems to be the big disclaimer.
That's my question is the excitement born of relief that we are moving in a positive direction and you're no longer having to deal with the ornery nature of the Vrabel coaching staff, the Gestapo lockdown on news and information that we were it feels like the Berlin Wall has come down from a media standpoint. Like, is that what we're excited about? Excited about weapons, excited about Levis? Or are people excited about like this team 2024 Super Bowl? Like, are the expectations becoming unreasonable, or are folks just excited for the change? Because I think being excited for the change, A-okay, perfectly fine, understandable. I would encourage that. But I would not encourage folks to get over their skis in the sense that this team is likely to be more than they're going to be in 2024, is likely to be more than a team in transition this year. I think that some folks may be losing sight of that.
I think it's a unique situation that we find ourselves in, is that I am personally okay with buying into the hype, right?
Sure.
Like I'm okay with it. We've seen plenty of teams go from worst to first in one season that have done less than what the Titans have done. I mean,
Sure.
if you really think about it. I love the staff. I love everything that they're doing. I just, I'm afraid that it's all going, like you said, when the adversity hits, everybody's then going to swing the pendulum the complete opposite side.
Total
Like
panic.
that
Yeah.
first game, if they don't
Nightmare.
win against the Bears, right? Like if they ever we're hyping up, they go 3-0 in the preseason,
Right.
and we're hyping them up, and everything's going great, and then they go out and put out a clunker against the Bears. Everybody's going to swing the pendulum the other way.
How about this? How about this? Brian Callahan
Yeah.
decides Will Levis, we want to get him some reps in preseason. Preseason week 2.
Oh God.
Pulls up with a hammy or something. He's played
Oh,
the entire first half.
vilify him.
Yeah, it's the SpongeBob meme where it's inside his brain and there's multiple SpongeBobs throwing papers everywhere and things are on fire. Like that's what the Nashville discourse will become immediately.
Yeah. I get the sense that I think what it is ultimately is that it is such a drastic. It's a drastic team. It's a drastically different team than anything that you have seen. Not just from Vrabel. It's drastically different from Malarkey, Wisenhunt, Jeff Fisher, Mike Munchak. Anything.
There's never been a Titans team like
moving
this.
to Tennessee, they've never had vibes that you can really buy into, that you kind of get swept up in, right? Like that's the thing. We're all getting swept up in these vibes because everything is great, everything is good. It's like when Vrabel says something is good, you got to a point like, but is it really? Is it really?
The Vrabel offseason awards,
like you're happy.
We got to the point where the Vrabel offseason awards were the guys that we think were going to suck. Like it was always opposite day. Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see how this all turns, into success on the field. Bottoms up, by the way. I'm going to take me some Dayquil right here on the show.
Lean on the show at 1 p.m. on a Thursday. You get some Sprite to wash that down with?
Got some water right here.
Okay.
But no Sprite. But I get what you're putting down. I think Marcus is right. Like it's a combination of the Titans look totally different than last year, and we don't know what Callahan and Walker weaknesses are.
Walker.
And I think he means Wilson.
Probably.
Maybe not Walker, but Wilson.
Yeah.
And Logan says 2020 into 2021 had a lot of vibes, but it was weird. It wasn't as high as this. And I agree that would probably be the closest to this, but it wasn't as high as what it is right now. But I think that though, because you talk about how will they handle adversity? How will the team handle adversity? I think the fans we know will handle it poorly. I think we know the media for the most part will handle it poorly. But I do think Callahan knows how to handle adversity. The big story, or one of the many big stories about Brian Callahan's tenure was last year, where heading into the bye, he's chewing out his team, chewing out the offensive line. Orlando Brown's talking about it, about how they're not scoring points, even though they won and all this stuff. They come out of the bye and they're just going crazy, scoring points and all that kind of stuff. They really bought into it. And he tore them a new one. So he's one of those leaders, one of those coaches that knows when to be your friend and when to be your boss, when to be your mentor, when to be the guy that's going to yell at you, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like at the end of the day that I'm not too worried about when they see adversity, but I do agree that, man, they are basically throwing, sunshine, glitter, unicorns all over these press conferences.
Yeah. Yeah, I think things have never been more positive. And again, I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I think that most of the positivity is coming from the fact that for the first time in a long time, arguably ever, the process with which they are building, the process with which they are going into the plan heading into the season, it's different. And I think on the whole, people agree it's positive. It's modern. It's the correct way to do things. So that part is exciting.
Well, let's talk about Treylon Burks and the hype train, because there are some interesting things about this Treylon Burks situation. I'm currently in the midst of I wrote 2,129 words on Treylon Burks, and I'm not even like a quarter of the way done with this article. We're going to more long form on Stacking Inbox. By the way,
what's the shortest article on Stacking the Inbox? Is there a
probably shortest one
under
for
1,000-word
is
article?
probably under 1,500. I don't think I've ever written one under 1,500. Mine are mostly over 2,000 easily.
I believe it.
But this Treylon Burks Hype Train. Oh my gosh, it is out of control.
This is tough right here.
I get it.
This is tough.
This is Zach with more, Zach with more words on Burks than he will have career yards is definitely for sure. I see I see what they're doing, and I don't know if everybody else recognizes it or anything. They are purposely putting this stuff out there to promote and inflate and juice up Treylon Burks himself, who has gone through 2 terrible years, and I'm all for that. But my God, AJ Brown, Terrell Owens.
I'm about to say I was reliably informed yesterday that this guy is
Julio Jones. Like, what are we doing here, Calvin Ridley? Calvin Ridley's like Don King out there doing.
I respect it. Listen, if you're going to give crazy comps, say it with your chest. Go in. I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, like the hype's so out of control. I mean, we had someone on Football and Other F Words, I won't name names, Stoney Keeley, said that he was going to be the next Deebo Samuel in this offense.
I heard that. Yep.
But I'm looking at the wide receiver 4 usage from 2019 through 2023. I'm looking at year 3 jumps from certain wide receivers. And I have to say, I wouldn't expect a lot from Treylon Burks this year, but what you may not see on the stat sheet may not matter for 2025 Treylon Burks. They're treating this like a rookie year.
Right.
This is Treylon Burks' rookie year.
Fresh start.
And they are developing him behind the scenes with hopes that he will turn into a wide receiver 2 next year. And I am okay with that. And I am okay with that plan as long as if it fails, they recognize they can't do it. They can't go into next year with that. And Burks is not terribly off. He's not terrible. Can we just say that? I know people, we're really hard on Treylon Burks as a Titans society. He suffered a lot of drops, but his rookie season showed a lot of promise. Injuries were inconsistent. The way that he was used was inconsistent. If you really go back and start breaking down snap counts, targets, start putting the thread in there and start, seeing all these things come together.
Well, and how about just the athletic ability? He really is one of the biggest, fastest players in the NFL.
Right. And there's a lot there to like. And to me, I'm not buying into it till I see it, but I do understand why kind of Brian Callahan's eyes light up when he talks about the idea of, hey, Treylon Burks has no expectations. He has no burden to bear. He's our wide receiver 4. We're going to treat him like our wide receiver 4. He's going to come in, come out. He's going to be a contributor. We're going to find ways to get him the ball, which is something, by the way, this Mike Vrabel team never wanted to do. And not even just with Treylon Burks. It was with anybody that was explosive, right? Think of how long it took Chig to find the field. Think of how long it took Treylon Burks to find some consistency, and then they bail on him. Think about A.J. Brown. It took forever for A.J. Brown to find the field. Most other teams, your wide receiver 1 that you drafted in the first round is playing 80% of the snaps.
Right.
Your A.J. Brown, who's still a high-priced wide receiver when you have nobody else to play, would have found the field quicker. Mike Vrabel did not want to do that.
Correct.
And to me, from what I've heard, he was, those movies where the dad has to take care of the child alone as a single father because in childbirth, the mom dies.
Right.
And then, so their relationship is strained. And, it's all about them becoming better relationship and him forgiving all this stuff.
Great comp.
He is that child.
Yeah.
He is that child. Yeah. He is, and Mike Vrabel, just anytime he looks at Treylon,
every time the father looks at him, he's reminded of his dead wife. Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is what happened. And
he really was.
Not to absolve Treylon Burks of everything that went wrong, but he came from a shit football program. where he was the biggest, fastest guy, no matter his weight, no matter his conditioning, and just was like, okay, well, I guess it will apply here in the NFL because nobody's told me differently, nobody's coaching me, and all this kind of stuff. And boom, it just didn't work out. Look, he's got to share a lot of the blame too, but it wasn't a perfect situation. And now he's got someone that wants to do it. But let's settle down, guys. Like he's wide receiver 4. And the fans, I think, are perfectly being fine, even though they're doing Jaquan Jackson hype way too much.
Listen, brother,
And
it's
we'll get to
wild
that
out
in a
here.
second.
There
But
have
to
been some
me,
words said about
yeah,
Jaquan Jackson that I
wide receiver 4, I'm in. I buy it. I like it. Let's roll with it.
yeah, it's a rehabilitation project, 100%. I mean, he is like a former head coach in the Nick Saban system. Welcome to the rehab program. You're a year away from the year, and I think that's the only reasonable approach you can take with him at this point. Now, as to the idea that the old coaching staff, Vrabel and his cohort, not necessarily being as not setting him up for success as best they could. I have had a private conversation with somebody who has spent time with or around Treylon this offseason, spoken to him, that without saying some of the specifics, like from Treylon himself, this was something that was causing a lot of frustration and was kind of a monkey off his back when this new system was implemented, when this new coaching staff came in. The idea that his opportunities are going to change is a very, very welcome thing. I'll say that. As for the hype, I mean, the comparisons yesterday, very funny from Calvin Ridley. The craziest comparisons you have heard on a Tennessee Titans practice field since AJ Brown compared Racing McMath to Julio Jones. I remember that happening.
Oh yeah, Julio Jones 2.0.
Right, exactly. So I think we were due for a new outrageous claim. And there is some truth to the idea that any coach, it's very much a coaching mentality. You come in, every coach thinks they can fix every player, right? It's an I can fix him mentality. So I'm sure that the coaching staff is eager to get their hands on a no pressure, nothing to lose Treylon Burks and see what can happen. I'm with you that the opportunity is just like the math doesn't math. There's not going to be a whole lot. It's going to take somebody getting hurt. Now, if you
he'll never live up to the hype that they are building up. It's just not going to happen.
Right. If you miss 16 total games from Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins this season combined, then you're going to get a lot more Treylon Burks, and we'll see what that looks like. But assuming those guys, those starting 3, stay healthy, you're going to see him. I would see, even if he has an awesome year and his catch rate is 80%, and they are scheming up a couple of times every game for him to touch the ball, and they're using him in a Deebo Samuel-esque way, I still think it's going to be like a 500, maybe 600 yard season. If all goes to plan, he breaks a couple of big ones and has a couple of 80, 90, 100 yard games in there because he has just a house call and they send him. Like, that's what it's going to take for him to have a big year. And I think if those are your expectations, that if he shows a lot of promise, when he is given an opportunity to touch the ball, he makes the most of it. We see him play more physically, which has been one of the big things, right? Where's this guy that we saw in college, the biggest, meanest son of a gun on the field? And you could tell he knew he was running through guys, crazy yak. Like, that's not been the case in the NFL so far. And we've gotten that vibe from his coaches. You've heard them talk about how they keep preaching to him, hey, where's this guy that was beaten up on the Alabama and the LSU and the Georgia defensive backs in college? Because we saw you doing that to those guys. You're facing those same guys on Sundays now. You're all a couple years older. So do it again. Like, we know that's within you. If he can assume that mentality and take this positive reinforcement that he's getting, which speaking of, the anti-Vrabel was pretty good about putting guys down, like not putting them down, but I guess getting guys to stay humble when they need to stay humble and lifting them up when they need lifting up. I don't think that applied to Treylon very well. Like, he was the exception, I felt like, because it was always down on Treylon. I can't remember many times where he was super complimentary. And I think that your analogy with the dad who sees his dead wife in his son all the time, like, that's a perfect analogy. So we're swinging the pendulum in the opposite direction. Maybe positive reinforcement is the kind of thing that's going to work for Treylon. If so, I'm all here for it.
Well, if we are to assume that this new generation of players that continue to come in are going to receive the Callahan style of coaching better, then you would assume that Treylon Burks would be part of that. And that really seems to be the case. From the outside looking in, I don't know Treylon Burks personally or anything. Do you want to bash the Jaquan Jackson truthers out there?
I don't want to. Yes, I want to bash the truthers.
You're getting a lot of it.
Bash Jaquan himself because he seems like a cool guy. He has, like, again, it's been like 10 seconds out of practice, but he has looked the part out of practice as far as his closing ability to run under the ball if it's thrown even remotely in his direction. Like that part is there. The speed is there. I've been impressed with what I've seen in terms of what I expected from a 6th-round rookie receiver. However, the cohort in the fan base that is losing their marbles over Jaquan Jackson. I have seen some outrageous comments on Twitter, some outrageous comments on the Broadway Sports Media YouTube page, folks saying that he is the Titans, the Titans Tank Dell. He is the Titans' new burner in the mold of help me out here, Detroit receiver now, Khalif Raymond. He's the new Khalif Raymond.
Which is what you really want, right? Don't you really
right, like,
want
I would say that's the ceiling comp,
like
is if he becomes Khalif Raymond, double thumbs up, 100%. But I think assuming that's the case already based on the handful of clips you've seen at practice, like I don't know. And we have to stay true to the pre-draft analysis. Our reaction to their choice of Jaquan Jackson there wasn't super positive, nothing against Jaquan, but I'm still not positive what the vision is with him besides him becoming their dual returner. And if that's the case and he's that guy and he provides value to them on the roster, awesome. Like 100%, it's worth a 6th-round pick. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of him providing plus value as a receiver, you want to talk about Treylon Burks not getting opportunities this year. How many balls do you think Jaquan Jackson is going to catch this year as a receiver? 12? Like I don't know. It's not going to be much, man. I don't see him being utilized much on offense at all, and I think that's reasonable.
It'll be interesting to see because with Tyler Boyd playing and taking up like 800 snaps, right?
Yeah.
Where does Jaquan Jackson really fit in? It's just really special teams.
Lead false here from Logan, by the way. 440 led.
Yeah, I mean, like Tajay Spears. Hello.
It started and ended with the 440 Sports Network, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Tulane has nothing to do with it. We don't helmet scout here.
No.
But to me, it's like I just we'll wait and see. But man, when I saw that someone in your mention said that he is Tank Dell.
Yeah.
Is
awesome.
Is ridiculous.
It's so great. Alike. I love it.
It just if you just throw on the tape, they are nothing alike.
Not even remotely similar.
The way that Tank Dell wins is through speed because he's quick, but it's his explosiveness and his route running. His route running is tremendous.
Yes, that's the sell.
mean, he's like Ladd McConkey, but with Deshaun Jackson speed.
Right.
Like that's a good way to describe him. He's Ladd McConkey's route running ability when he's not being pressed, and he has the speed like Deshaun Jackson. That's Tank Dell, not Jaquan Jackson. Jaquan Jackson's got a lot to prove to me for me to believe in him. You have to see it to believe it. Okay. You told me you had what was apparently a controversial take regarding the offensive line last week that you are still receiving heat in the DMs for up until yesterday. So you said you wanted to run it by me on the show when we get to the offensive line discussion. We are here at the offensive line discussion, and we're going to kick it off with that.
Okay. So JT and I did a show last week where it was an under pressure draft, talking about the guys that we felt were under the most pressure in the Titans organization. And one of my picks for the Titans was Bill Callahan. I think Bill Callahan is under tremendous pressure this season. And I have gotten a ton of pushback on that. Folks seem to think that he is in fact under no pressure, which I think is outrageous. So before I explain my take in a brief synopsis, what is your general reaction to the idea that Bill Callahan is under pressure this year?
Okay, I get where you're coming from, but I don't think that Bill Callahan himself feels pressure because he's just that good. Like, right. You get what I'm saying?
A big part of this is how you define pressure, 100%. If pressure is likelihood of you losing your job, then no. But that's obviously not where I'm coming from in terms of pressure. How I am defining pressure here is who are the guys that are shouldering the most responsibility for Titans' performance this season? And the task he is given, which is fix this offensive line, which has been unfixable for a couple of years now. That's a big one, and the Titans' success largely hinges upon it. Now, here's where the logic, I think, is completely derailed, because people in my comments are saying, if the Titans' offensive line this year stinks somehow, I am abdicating him of responsibility, because his track record speaks for itself. And clearly, if this doesn't work, it's going to be because the Titans are broken, not because Bill Callahan is broken. And it's completely it does not track whatsoever for you to say, if the Titans' offensive line this year is good, then we are going to praise Bill Callahan. But if the offensive line is bad, then it is not Bill Callahan's fault. You can't do both of those things. You got to pick. If you think this line,
that he has essentially picked the people that are going to be the starting offensive line, he has history with Sadiq Charles, if I'm not mistaken, just a year. But he probably is the reason why Sadiq Charles is on this team. They traded for Leroy Watson. They did not attack right tackle aggressively because he probably felt I could do something with NPF, Jalen Duncan. They got his guy in the draft at left tackle. Peter Skronsky is obviously a pedigree guy that he could do something with. And I'm sure, based on comments from Brian Callahan about wanting size and an IQ over speed and athleticism, that's probably something that he learned from Bill Callahan. They got together and they signed Lloyd Cushenberry.
And see, people are in the comments. I was drunk on that show. All-time bad take. 0% pressure. You cannot believe these things.
But this idea that he doesn't get any blame is ridiculous. Now, maybe he doesn't get the most blame, right? I mean, if there's injuries that happen, right? And
sure.
And all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But if the starting five that he chooses sucks and they play all 17 games and they suck, well, he deserves some blame. And I agree with you. Now, if they suck because Will Levis is holding, there's obvious caveats to that, right?
Yes.
That are beyond Bill Callahan's control. But if Bill Callahan, to me, I get where you're coming from. If I was drafting, I don't think I would draft Bill Callahan. Because you guys were doing a draft, right? I wouldn't draft him that high. I would, depending on how many people you had to draft. He probably wouldn't even crack it, because to me, pressure is who's going to feel the pressure the most.
Sure.
To me, Cedric Gray, obviously, tons of pressure on him from the fans, from the team, on himself. Basically they are entrusting him to fill this major role. Tons of pressure. And while Bill Callahan has pressure to fix this offensive line, I'm not exactly concerned that it's not going to happen. And I feel like if something is really not going to happen, do you really have pressure? There's no worry. So, to me, is there really any pressure if there's really no worry? And I guess I get but I get where you're coming from. I understand.
Right. I get that entirely. And if the point is we're defining pressure differently, then I get that. And that's actually why it led to such an interesting episode, I think, by the way. People should listen to it. JT and I came into it not telling each other how we defined pressure. And so it led us to pick very different things. And he was more along those lines of guys that are he was talking about how MPF is under a ton of pressure, because if you're going to be the right tackle for this team, it's put up or shut up time for him, right? That was how he defined it. And for me, it was how much of the Titans' success this year are you shouldering? But what I'm not frustrated by that. What I am frustrated by is what this has morphed into, which is, again, this idea, and I've heard it from multiple, a half dozen, a dozen people now, that if this year things go poorly, I'm not going to blame Bill Callahan. He is not going to be responsible for it. And I'm going to say you cannot simultaneously believe the following things. One, you can't believe that Bill Callahan is worth his weight in gold as a coach, is very good at what he does, and is capable of working wonders for an offensive line. Two, the Titans have enough pieces on their team to have an improved offensive line. And three, if they don't improve, Bill isn't at fault. You can't believe those things.
I agree. Right? I agree with you entirely. I agree.
And here's what I foresee is in October, things are going to start if anything goes poor whatsoever, Stillman's going to make a week's worth of content out of why is Bill Callahan where's the wonder? Where's the magic from Bill Callahan? Why are we not holding him accountable? And people are going to shit on him incessantly because it's what we do for Stillman, because he deserves it 99% of the time. And for once, he's going to be 100% correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my thing. Because Logan, first off, I think this is an interesting thing from Jason McDonald.
I saw this.
Not exactly a football take, but he has to feel a lot of pressure to specifically do well for his son.
Sure.
That's a pretty good take. It's something I didn't consider. Titans, this from Logan, Titans fans have inflated Bill into being able to turn anyone into an average player. Well, it's because he has. I mean, he pretty much has. I can't think of many below average offensive linemen that he has had that has not turned into average. I mean, we mentioned one of them, Leroy Watson, comes into a game and plays really well at left tackle, and then Bill Callahan wants to trade for it.
Right.
It may not be perfect all season long, but he has turned people around pretty quickly with time and effort and technique, and you could see it in the growth from week over week. I shit on A to Z earlier for not doing a little bit of research on that On3 thing, but I will say that their video of JC Latham last week and JC Latham this week, I feel like was really a good synopsis of what, first off, JC Latham's work effort and work ethic has provided him an improvement, but also what Bill Callahan's coaching and teaching has provided an improvement. And you see the growth. So there's no reason to expect that bad players become average players. Average players become good players. Good players become great players. Great players become fantastic players. Fantastic players become elite players under Bill Callahan. That is how it kind of works when you have these kinds of position coaches with this kind of pedigree. So to me, like, I am with you, and I'd be with, future October Stillman. If this team has not shown significant improvement, does not have to be top 10.
No.
Have to be top 5. Third league average in October.
Average.
I'm fine. Yeah, that's a win because they're just going to get better as the year goes on. But if they're all healthy and they're all trash, then we have an issue. And that's where you should be pointing the blame. And that some of it's going to be Bill Callahan, some of it's going to be Brian Callahan, but he's not going to be blameless. And so I agree with you.
And Troy makes a good point. Stillman, I'm wrong about Stillman. He won't be blaming Callahan. He'll be blaming Rand because that's what he does. So fair point there. Logan presented this to me yesterday in a DM, which I think is actually pretty fair. This is my compromise here. I think, and he commented a second ago. Here we go. He says he thinks the only way that Bill Callahan fails is if center, left guard, left tackle are bad. I'm willing to say that if this Titans right side of the offensive line is just like, there's just like, it's not working. It's a mess all year long. There is room there to say, well, maybe, Bill Callahan's very good at what he does, but he's not a miracle worker. They really don't have the dudes. Bill Callahan can't fix it. Nobody can fix it. It's the Titans that are broken, not Bill Callahan. That is a fair take. I may or may not agree with it based on what we see, but it's a fair take. With that left side of the line, with those 3 guys that he has handpicked, if they are no good, he is going to feel the heat for it. He should be feeling the heat for it because that side is his responsibility and his doing.
Yeah, fully agree. I want to ask you a question because at first I was making fun of Austin Stanley and A to Z. They're just catching the brunt of it this last 24 hours.
Day for A to Z,
So they put up the video of the guys going through and hitting the big long sled and moving it to the side, right? Not Bertha or Olga, but one of the longer.
I think it's called a shiver sled. I don't know why, but I think that's what it says on there.
And then they're like, they show 3 of them, and they're like Dylan Radins, and they do the surprise emoji face.
Yeah.
Which he didn't do anything differently than the other 2 guys before him did.
Content, Zach.
So I was ready to make fun of him today.
Right.
And then you said, okay, one of the topics you sent was, okay, Dylan Radins is kind of impressing me.
Yes.
Okay, so what is Dylan Radins doing? And I'm going to ask you questions, not to antagonize.
No, please. I can be interrogated.
Do you really know if Dylan Radins is impressing you or not, or is it just the tattoo sleeve got finished?
No, I will. I'm willing to back my take with my chest here. I will say that in terms of me saying he is impressing me, at least half of that, if not more, is coming from the fact that he looks significantly different this year, and that part is just true. Now, again, it's been a couple of practices so far. I don't think it's fair to say.
Is it physically different or stuff on the field different, or is
so? I'll get to that. Let me start with the physical thing. Because there is room to say, well, how much can you really tell if a guy's not in pads? It's been 3 practices. It's May. Fair. There is no room to say he does not look. His body composition is different. He looks leaner. He looks stronger. That part is true. He looks more like a lineman that actually is going to play. Like it sounds like a dumb take, but there are certain guys out there you look at and you're just like, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for being a camp body. And there were times in the past where that kind of where Dylan Radins fit in, both from the way that he looks and the way that he was like performing in practice. Just standing around with the lineman this year, he looks like a guy that catches your eye. You're like, oh, that's Dylan Radins. Okay, that guy may very well be a starting lineman in the NFL. The other part of it is in terms of his athleticism. And again, like I would need to go back and review the tape from a year ago, but just anecdotally, when I'm surveying the field with no prejudice, just trying to see what catches my eye, the way that he is operating in drills, there seems to be, and it kind of matches the way that he's changed the way that he's built. There seems to be a new level of ferocity. I don't know if explosiveness may be a step too far, but he seems to be acting stronger. I'm kind of doing a bad job of explaining this, I feel like, but he just, for the first time in 3 or 4 years he's been on this team, he is catching my eye in the offensive line drills. I could not have said that to you in past years.
So would you say, I believe it was PK, like his second year at Dylan Radin's second year. PK kind of questioned, like, do you have any fight in you? Like, do you have any passion? Do you have any like want to win the job kind of deal? Because that's when he lost it to NPF.
Right.
So do you feel when you say that you're seeing a little bit more power, a little bit more effort, is that kind of tying into that?
I think fight is a great word for it. Yes, 100%. For the first time, I feel like he's out there. There's some bad intentions behind the way that he is operating, and that's what you want in your lineman. You want them to be throwing their weight around like they care, and that's kind of what I'm seeing from Dylan Radins. Yeah.
How much of that is just because he finished the tattoo sleeve? Like, I feel like a lot of this, he's got more tattoos, and you guys are like, oh, that's a badass right there. He's got more tattoos this year.
Well, maybe you could argue that he looks more impressive with the tattoos. You could also argue that the self, I mean, you dress for success. I guess you tattoo yourself for success.
Yeah.
The aura that's given himself, maybe there's some.
Are y'all confusing him with Taylor Lewan, maybe? Because, he's got all the tattoos, and you're like, is that Taylor Lewan out there?
No, not quite. Because he's not quite the same size and build as Taylor is. But yeah, I do think there's something to the tattoo sleeve.
Put your betting odds on, or rank them. Who do you think is starting? How do you think the right guard, right tackle depth chart shakes out? You're here in May, but predict it. We'll kind of keep tabs on this, okay? So you're not going to be beholden to what you say today, but we'll keep tabs, see how it progresses. Your depth chart for right guard and right tackle, day 1, week 1 of the NFL season.
Okay, so I'm gonna come at this from the approach of who I think whose job it is to lose as of right now. I think let's start with the tackle position. I think at tackle it is marginally NPF's to lose. I think that if you truth serum to the coaching staff right now, and I really do think they're coming at it from an approach of I don't really know. We're going to see who beats out the others in August, but if they had to guess, I'm going to say NPF is the right tackle 1. That's their primary option. I think that their second choice, if NPF does not work out, man, it's tough because these new guys they brought in, I just don't know. Like Leroy Watson, it wouldn't shock me at all if Bill is really high on Leroy Watson as one of his tackle options. So like, I'm stuck between Leroy Watson and like John Ajokwu. I don't think they view Radins as a tackle, so that's a big part of the reason why I'm not right. That's why I'm not mentioning him in this conversation. Personally, I would include him, but if they don't see him that way, then I'm not going to say that they have any intention there. So I'll say that at tackle, it's NPF, Leroy Watson, Ajokwu in that order, and then at guard, I think it is. And our boy Brunskill, I don't want to turn into Mike Herndon here and just hate on Daniel Brunskill for no reason. I'm not going to do that. However, I do think as of today, yeah, I would put Raiden's as the primary. I think it's Raiden's job to lose at guard, followed by Brunskill, followed by maybe Sadiq Charles. Yeah, I'd say those three in that order.
Okay, it's just interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about the defense, because the defense, and before we get into that, I need to defend Sinker's Beverages in the Kingston group, because I have not. I forgot to put them in the middle section where Braden, he has like 5 different ad spots, and I'm just not an ad spot guy. I'm a beginning end guy. I like to thank you, like
substance guy,
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Sinker's Beverages, located in East Nashville, multi-time award-winning liquor store. They have everything that you need, everything you want, everything for your parties. They're also on Uber Eats, so all you got to do is open up Uber Eats, get what you want, put it in your cart, check out, and damn it, Easton, they'll drive so you could drink, Easton. I tossed that over to you.
Did you? I was reading the comments. Yeah. I am so sorry I let you down. Hey, they'll drive so you can drink. I'm sorry, Sinkers.
Yeah. The Kingston Group, buildkg.com for your home remodeling needs, locally owned, locally operated. That's where you need to go. Just give them a call. That's all you got to do. Tell them that a football show sent you. All right.
There we go.
I agree with Stoney. If you don't shop at Sinkers or the Kingston Group, then screw off. I'll keep it PG for this
brand appropriate. Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. The defense was the hot topic yesterday, and Denard Wilson is being like, what did Cheeto say? He said something like, "Geez," like he had some.
He compared him to a messianic figure of some kind. Yeah,
He compared him like
a strong take.
It was great. I loved it.
I don't know if he was Gandhi or Mother Teresa, or it was something positive.
Yeah. But everybody is loving Denard Wilson, loving his energy, loving the system, loving the aggression. Everybody is telling you, from the offense to the defense, everybody's telling you how different this team is and being ran, and how different it will be schematically. It's going to be great, right? But we shift over to the defense, and I love the Denard Wilson hire. I think it was a great hire. I love everything I've read about him, everything about teaching about the why, correcting mistakes, not letting them fester. That's stuff that he has carried with him throughout his career. That's not anything new, but it is new to the Tennessee Titans, according to Arden Key, who let out a big hell yeah when asked if they just let mistakes kind of glide over. And Joe Rexroad put me on blast this morning for quote tweeting PK's post and saying, well, this explains a lot about why we kept seeing the same mistakes pop up throughout the season.
I saw you tweet that.
He took it, and
this is on the radio show this morning. They were going in on you.
On the radio show.
Outrageous.
He turned it into, I think the whole team the whole prior coaching staffs are idiots. They don't know what they were doing. No, I am just saying, and listen, I'm not saying that they didn't correct any mistakes. I'm just saying that this statement that is pretty emphatic,
strong,
that it kind of shows why this team has kind of struggled with consistency on defense, and why the same issues keep popping up. People with their heads not turned around, people with bad technique, people with, being too far off the line, bad communication, not knowing where they're supposed to be. If they're not correcting that stuff and really hammering down the details, and let me tell you something, Aaron Glenn does it, Mike McDonald does it, Denard Wilson does it. Like all these defensive coaches that I have that did research on over the summer, they all hammer out the mistakes. Doesn't mean that it means that they run some perfect defense, but they hammer out these mistakes. I'm a little bit more hyped for the defense than the offense. And maybe that's just me, but I'm really hyped for this defense.
I think it is just you. Yeah, I think you're alone.
I don't know why. Why doesn't anybody
because
like
it's defense? May and defense is boring at OTAs. That's what it is. I mean, that's certainly a part of it. I get where you're coming from though, because they got a number of really exciting pieces as well. I don't know. The reason why I am not actually with you on that is just because, as much as I do value the brains that Denard Wilson brings to the operation defensively, just as much as I do what Bill Callahan is bringing to the offensive operation, or Brian rather. I think Brian has more to work with than than Denard does. Not to say that they've neglected the defensive side of the ball, but I think it's fair to say that's where the most holes still remain on this team. And that's not necessarily indicative of them being bad. I think the defense could be very good if they can cover over some of the deficiencies and the lack of depth that they have. And you could potentially do that with a really strong cornerback group with a couple of big time pieces up front, but lacking depth. You need those guys to stay healthy and be the stars that they are. I'm at a level of intrigue with the defense more than I am a level of excitement, because I do think that those deficiencies, those holes carry a lot of weight, and I'm interested to see how they plan on scheming for them and or around them before I get too excited.
Where are you at on all these statements that are being made from Chikakonkwo to Arden Key to people last week talking about how different it is? In fact, we even heard on a Bill Callahan mic'd up, Calvin Ridley talking about how even different and better it is than the Jaguars. So it's not just Mike Vrabel catching flack. It's other
Jaguars don't even wear helmets. I don't know if you've seen this. They can't even afford to have helmets in the spring down there, apparently. I don't know what's going on.
They're a poverty franchise anyway. But where are you at on, is this just, because a lot of people are like taking it a couple different ways. No big deal. This is just, players saying stuff. It means nothing about Vrabel. Vrabel's the greatest coach. And listen, Vrabel, to me, in my opinion, is the best Titans head coach that they have had, even better than Jeff Fisher. And
I think that's objective.
I just think skill-wise, what he's able to do, what he's able to work with, I like Mike Vrabel personally over Jeff Fisher, but I would understand why people like Jeff Fisher over Mike Vrabel. But I feel like people are misunderstanding, I think, what the players are trying to say. I do think that what Mike Vrabel did not work for the majority of the people. And to be a great leader, to be a great teacher, to be a great coach, you have to understand that your message can be communicated in multiple different ways to multiple different people. It does not need to be one size fit all.
Right.
And while I do down Mike Vrabel for being an Amish man when it comes to analytics, I do know that he was a very smart coach. He was a very strategic coach in certain situations, but there is something to say about the lack of consistency over the whole entire course. You do really well against bad or good teams, and then you fall down against bad teams. It's kind of like you didn't really progress anybody at a really high, speedy rate like you should. And some of that could be tied to John Robinson, but a lot of that could be tied to him because it is his job. But a lot of these players are really shedding a light on the fact that things are drastically different and different in a drastically good way.
Yeah, 100%. And you can feel what they're talking about from a media standpoint, the way that everything is being operated, not just the way that the coaches are interacting with the players, but the way that the coaches are interacting with us, the way that the players are interacting with us, the way that PR is interacting with us. Like it is a lighter, airier feel around the building. Now we could get, again, playing devil's advocate here, that's all fun and good and great in May. You could get theoretically to a point in the season where it's like, well, all of that light and airiness, maybe that's just because this team's soft and the coaching staff is too permissive, and they need to be harder on these guys and demand more because it's not going great and things seem to be a little loosey goosey around here. Like, I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but there's always another side to every sword here. I do think that it is a positive thing for a lot of the younger players, and as this team has hemorrhaged veterans because they aren't worth paying on new contracts because the drafting has been largely bad, this team's gotten a lot younger in the past couple years. And with those guys, there certainly was an intimidation factor with Mike Vrabel, right? There's no doubt that the Harold Landrys and the Jeffrey Simmons of the team loved and respected and had no issue with the way that Mike Vrabel approached his coaching. But when it came to the guys that are new, that are just trying to find their footing in the NFL, find their footing on a team, not piss off the head ball coach, I'd imagine things with Brian Callahan feel infinitely better and more positive than they did with Mike Vrabel. And that, I think, can be a good thing as long as, again, it doesn't get too loosey-goosey, it doesn't get too permissive. Brian Callahan does a good job of walking that line of being a positive coach, but demanding a lot and coming down on guys when they deserve it.
Well, I know from being, from my own work experience, it's all about setting clear expectations, but also how to achieve, setting out plans and explaining the why
Mm-hmm.
of how to achieve those expectations. And I feel like Mike Vrabel would put out there, like, here's our expectations. Good luck. Like that's
Figure it
really what
out.
it felt like. Like, figure it out. You're grown ass men. I'm
Right.
not here to hold your hand.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Here's what we expect. You either do it or you don't. And one of the big things when reading through about all these potential head coaching candidates, defensive coordinator candidates, and all this kind of stuff is that how much the guys that I really thought would work really well for this team, they're all about the why. They're explaining the why. And that's really why I liked Aaron Glenn a lot and moved him up my rankings. Not past Brian Callahan, but moved him up my rankings. And again, Mike McDonald too. Even though they were defensive head coaches, they were all about not bullshitting, but also explaining why you have to do this. Why we expect this. Here's how you get there. Here's how we're going to help you, and here's what you got to do to help yourself. And you made this mistake. Okay, well, here's how we correct it. You are being asked to run this route. Here's why you're running this route this way, and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
That is important. I don't feel like you, and listen, I'm not there in the room. I'm not there in the locker room. And I'm sure what Mike Vrabel does in front of the media is coaching. Like, I'm not saying that he's not coaching.
Right.
But I don't think that there was a lot of why. And I think that you're hearing that from even guys like Colton Dowd, Chig, Arden Key. There's not a lot of why. Even some of the stuff that Will Levis has said. And I think that's a really big, important thing for this next generation of football is for players to understand the why. Like, don't you think nerds, and I'm a nerd, so I can say it, nerds like Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel are being meticulous in explaining the why? Right? I mean, that's what they do. And that's why they are super successful coaches. And that's why players like playing for them. Same with Sean.
Well, and with guys like that, by the way, when you're not the hulking frame of Mike Vrabel, I'd imagine a guy like Mike McDaniel walks into the building with Miami, and it's like, I better explain to these guys why I'm asking them to do what they do. Because if they disagree at all, and I just tell them because I'm the ball coach, that's why, it may not go over very well. They may not respect me.
Yeah. And listen, and that's to say that Mike Vrabel's formula doesn't work. We've seen it work here. We've seen it work technically at Ohio State. We've seen it work, that same kind of style work in years past with the New England Patriots. But at some point, you have to adapt or die. And sometimes if you don't adapt, and listen, that's not to say Vrabel can't adapt. And maybe this will kick him in the right path to maybe adapt his message and adjust how he approaches, the next stop of coaching. But at the end of the day, Brian Callahan's, I think, way, which leans into the Zach Taylor way, the Sean McVay way, the Shanahan way, all these ways that we have all wanted, is really going to work wonders for a lot of the players that we probably have all given up on, and rightfully so. I'm not going to say that nobody's rightfully should not have given up on Treylon Burks or, Dylan Radins at some point, but it's going to work to a certain point. And I think it's going to be really beneficial as you go forward and figuring out what this team wants to be, what this team will be, how this team will find success. And I think it's really going to work out for Will Levis. And at the end of the day, that's really what matters right now, is making sure that Will Levis has the best supporting cast, but not only on the field, but in the rooms. And it seems like Brian Callahan has really put that together. And it seems like the team is really, they can say, and listen, I'm not saying that they are not sad or shocked or surprised or didn't love Mike Vrabel. But some of those players, that's all they knew in the NFL. And now those players that only knew Mike Vrabel now have seen a different way of doing things. And while the grass may not always be greener, sure is a little bit more comfortable on this side of the lawn. So I just want to throw that out there.
And it's a good take
for that.
No notes.
No notes. I like it. So no notes. We're about 5 minutes over. We're gonna shut this thing off. Seekers Beverages, Kingston Group, BuildKG.com. Seekers Beverages. Easton, what do you guys got coming up on the Hot Read podcast in just 2 hours?
2 hours from now, the Hot Read podcast. We will not be repetitive. So if you're like, I already watched Houston once today, I don't need to watch again. Wrong. You're incorrect. Check us out at 4 p.m. We are doing our typical show and tell, all the sights and sounds from yesterday, a bunch of clips. If you want to hear it from the coaches and the players' mouths themselves, tune in with us.
Stackingtheinbox.com. We have Film Friday, some UDFAs coming out tomorrow. We have Treylon Watkins. Today was talking about the new era of Titans. And then earlier this week, because I wrote it last week when I was healthy, a big long form on Will Levis using data of 7 quarterbacks to predict what should be proper expectations stat-wise on the stat sheet for Will Levis in year 2 under Brian Callahan. So,
yeah, those other quarterback was it like
really
Zach
detailed.
Wilson, Kenny Pickett?
No,
Okay.
it was not.
Some better quarterbacks than that?
It was better quarterbacks than that.
Okay.
It was quarterbacks that had similar situations to Will Levis, supporting cast, coaching changes, talent level. I used obviously. You should go read it. Go read it between shows. But I went through, did some stats, pulled some growth rates for all those quarterbacks, some averages, and I kind of set like the elite expectations, and then like, here are my proper expectations that I'd be happy with.
Reasonable. Yeah.
And one of those is actually has to stay healthy. So
that's
outside
fair.
of the stats,
that's
got to stay healthy.
Point. Yeah.
For Easton, I am Zach. Follow us on Twitter, Easton Freeze at FWordsPod. And this has been a football show.